Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great Friday show for you right before a holiday. I always know to be happy because you're here on Friday.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And so I know that we're running into the weekend.
I'm excited. How was your trip, by the way?
It was good. So I went to Qatar and we were doing a docuseries for News Nation, and I just was able to just like embrace it and explore. Now I have this travel series that's separate from this called World of Travel, and I have to produce, do everything on the ground. But this was nice to just show up and be told what the schedule was, but also work alongside some really strong and amazing News Nation producers. So
that's awesome.
I'm excited for everybody to see. Yeah, it's a fascinating place.
Coming up on Rising, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration must end its months-long National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C.
And we'll be taking a look at Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's new message to American travelers. I'm sure you saw that as we head into the holiday season.
But first, I'm sure we have thoughts about that, but what's on your lens?
Not that, but we'll get to that. So no one had this on their 2025 political bingo card. Zohran Mamdani, New York's new mayor-elect and self-described Democratic socialist, walking into the White House to sit down with President Donald Trump after months of them lobbing political grenades at each other. Yet, here we are. And honestly, I think this meeting needed to happen. So Mamdani is only 34 years old, barely known outside of the 5 boroughs before this election season. Now he's suddenly a national figure, and Trump is calling him the, quote, communist mayor, who supposedly begged for an Oval Office sit-down. Mamdani says the agenda for the meeting is about public safety, affordability, and economic security, all things New Yorkers are desperate for, in his words. He also spelled out why this moment matters. Take a look.
I know that for tens of thousands of New Yorkers, this meeting is between two very different candidates who they voted for the same reason. They wanted a leader who would take on the cost of living crisis that makes it impossible for working people to afford living in this city.
Then he doubled down.
My team reached out to the White House to set up this meeting because I will work with anyone to make life more affordable for the more than 8.5 million people who call this city home. I have many disagreements with the president, and I believe that we should be relentless and pursue all avenues and all meetings that could make our city affordable for every single New Yorker.
Now, here's where my unpopular opinion comes in. Mamdani and Trump are a lot more alike than either of them wants to admit. And that's exactly why this meeting has real potential. Think about it. They both ran as political outsiders, promising to blow up the status quo. They both use social media and alternative platforms to bypass traditional media in many ways. Mamdani even threw a press conference exclusively for influencers and content creators. That's a page straight out of the Trump 2016 playbook. Now, according to NBC News, his team said it was, quote, aimed at reaching new and less politically engaged audiences. That's also MAGA 101. And look at their core messages: affordability, the economy, the everyday American, or in Mamdani's case, the everyday New Yorker. Strip away the ideology, and they were talking to the same pain points. When voters in two completely different universes respond to the same message, maybe the divide isn't as deep as the headlines make it seem. These two have traded barbs for months. Trump accused him of being a, quote, communist and threatened to even deport Mamdani and even withhold federal money from New York. Mamdani clapped back on election night, telling the president to, quote, turn the volume up. Trump fired off, quote, and so it begins, on Truth Social. It's messy, it's petty, it's politics. But today's meeting, it could be the first adult decision either of them has made in a minute. Because if two men who built their brands on division can show even a flicker of cooperation, that sets the tone for the entire country. They don't have to like each other. They don't even have to agree. But they do have a shared responsibility: the cost of living, the crisis that's hitting millions of Americans. And on that, their goals definitely overlap. So here's my lens. If Mamdani and Trump really do have so much in common, then maybe, just maybe, they can let bygones be bygones and show America what working across the aisle actually looks like. If they want to prove they're leaders, this is their chance. And honestly, that might be the most affordable change either of them can offer right now.
Well, really interesting, Lindsey. I actually agree with everything that you said.
You think they're similar?
I do, yeah. Well, So I was talking to a Democratic strategist who was talking about really how they ran the Mamdani campaign. He wasn't on it, but watching from the outside and living in New York. And he said that Mamdani's goal was to build a grassroots coalition and to get out low and mid propensity voters and people who had never voted before. That is exactly what Trump did in 2024, was they focused on low and mid prop voters, right? So there is a complete overlap in the strategy of who they're trying to appeal to. They both focused heavily on economic issues, and they're both these sort of outsider, like supposedly not really politician-type candidates. So I do think that strategy-wise, they are alike in a lot of ways, and I'm very curious to see how this meeting goes. There's not a lot of details about it, which is interesting.
I know, we're trying to talk to all the White House correspondents that we know. They're like,
the reporters don't know anything. The White House officials, perhaps outside of people actually involved in the immediate planning, don't have no idea when he's coming or like where he's going to be. They said he's going to show up, and that's when we'll know that he's there.
I think for entertainment purposes, right, a lot of people are looking at this and like, oh, this could be like Real Housewives of Potomac, right? Like he can get in the Oval Office. And it's not that great for our country to have that happen. Like to have a moment that we had with Volodymyr Zelensky where there's a blow up between the vice president and a president of Ukraine and our president, or like what happened with the South African leader that came in the Oval Office and there was a kind of discrepancy, articles pulled up just to like for a gotcha kind of moment. Even though there might be merit to the issues, there's a way and decorum that I hope we can bring back to the office, even with the transparency that the president says that he has by having the arguments out loud in front of everybody. I would love to see them talk about it, because what I know is that looking at polling and how the trajectory of polling has gone this year is that people are really frustrated with political leaders on both sides of the aisle. It usually gets people out to vote. I think sometimes people get out to vote because they want their cause championed, and some people just get out to vote to have something stop that's currently in leadership. And so if people are upset about the economy still and we're blaming Biden, but Biden is no longer to blame, then the onus is now on President Trump, who's now 11 months into the year. And I think that he can work alongside the New Yorkers that are frustrated, people that remind me of like a Joe Rogan, who went from supporting Bernie Sanders to supporting President Trump, because some of those policies of talking to the everyday American overlap. They can have an opportunity to show Congress possibly how to behave and maybe get stuff done. Or they can have a theatrical moment that we'll talk about for the next few weeks that gets us nowhere.
And I'm also curious to see where immigration comes up on this, because Mamdani has said that he does not want the city to cooperate with ICE, which was something that Mayor Eric Adams was willing to do. I wouldn't be surprised if that's an ask that Trump makes of Mamdani in exchange for getting that federal funding. There was an interview that Mamdani did with a local news outlet earlier this week where he was asked about the free bus program, and he wanted to fund it by raising corporate tax rates, which Kathy Hochul has already said that she's not willing to do. And he was like, well, the most important thing is not how we fund it, it's that we fund it. And so he's already running into roadblocks in terms of implementing his agenda. And so I guess the question then is, will voters blame him if these things don't get implemented, or will Kathy Hochul become the sort of scapegoat?
Oh, right. And I think there's a lot there about what Mamdani has said on the campaign trail. But again, I liken him to President Trump as well about things that are promised, like I'm turning this economy around first thing, and we're 11 months into the year, or I'm ending wars. And even though he says it was an exaggerated claim, immediately, days into his presidency, and or months in before we even started having real conversations. I think that those are, people overpromise on campaign trails on both sides of the aisle. So there's going to be frustration there. Mamdani has some real pie in the sky ideas that don't land for all Americans specifically, but New Yorkers. So I think he's going to have to explain himself. But as long as he's pushing and we see some results, the best thing that can happen to him is that even one of his policies lands and provides a runway for New Yorkers to have ease economically. And then Democrats can maybe look to some of the policy ideas without saying we adopt this entire idea of being democratic socialists, and say these policies work, and this is what we're implementing into our strategy for the next few years, because I'm not seeing a clear strategy.
I am excited to see what comes out of this meeting. The tone, what they talk about. How long are they going to sit in front of the cameras versus maybe having some sort of, backroom meeting where the press isn't privy to it? And are they going to take questions from the media too, right?
They need to. I mean, if you took questions with the leader of Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince, come on, you could take questions with Mamdani. This is like the stakes were a little higher with the Crown Prince. So we'll see. President Trump seemingly calling for Democratic leaders to be hanged. What he posted on Truth Social and what the White House is saying next. We'll be right back. President Trump apparently calling for the arrest and even the death of 6 Democratic lawmakers after they posted this video addressed to active service members, reminding them that they can refuse an unlawful order. Take a look.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army,
Our Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
That video sparked a firestorm online, including a barrage of social media posts from the commander-in-chief himself. On Thursday morning, he posted to Truth Social, "It's called seditious behavior at the highest level. Each one of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. We won't have a country anymore. An example must be set." Minutes later, he took it a step further, reposting this Truth Social user who wrote, "Hang them, George Washington would." He followed it up with 2 posts of his own, reading, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors, lock them up. And seditious behavior punishable by death."
That prompted a sharp condemnation from many on the left. California Governor Gavin Newsom writing on X, quote, "The President of the United States of America just called for the death of Democratic lawmakers. This man is sick in the head." And Senator Chris Murphy and some others had choice words for Republicans. Take a look.
If you are a person of influence in this country, maybe it's time to pick a side. If you are a Republican in Congress, if you are a Republican governor, maybe it's time to draw a line in the sand and say that under no circumstances should the President of the United States be calling on his political opposition to be hanged.
Meantime, Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who posted the original video, also responded yesterday. Take a look.
This really isn't about those of us who made the video. This is about who we are as Americans and how we're going to engage with people who we disagree with. I would hope that people of all backgrounds, Democrat, Republican, Independent, would agree that threatening death for people you disagree with is beyond the pale of who we are as Americans. For me, I believe in the power of this country and that we are better than our current politics represent, and I refuse to be intimidated out of defending the country I love.
Despite the outcry from Democrats, the White House clarified Thursday that the president wasn't calling for the deaths of lawmakers. Here's Caroline Levitt at yesterday's press briefing.
Just to be clear, does the president want to execute members of Congress?
No. Let's be clear about what the president is responding to, because many in this room want to talk about the president's response, but not what brought the president to responding in this way. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging.
So I want to start with, I agree that Caroline Levitt's sentiments that we shouldn't just be encouraging the military to not follow the commands of the president, which is part of their responsibility, because that could lead to chaos. What I think maybe would be a better use of their time is to encourage Congress to act against the president, including Republican lawmakers, to say, we're going to stand up even further in instances like Venezuela, where we think that you are overreaching with power and attacking and using military action under this guise of counterterrorism, when it usually is counter narcotics, and you're skipping over lawful steps and putting military people in harm's way by attacking possibly innocent civilians. And then they have a moral friction with our president. So there's a lot of nuance there. But I also think if our president is retweeting or whatever you call it on Truth, sharing a post that says hang people, that's really uncomfortable for me, especially when you have people like Senator Mark Kelly in the video who knows uncomfortably too well what political violence can do to his wife, Senator Gabby Giffords, and others. I think that we shouldn't even joke about that, even when the president was at Charlie Kirk's funeral and said, I hate my enemies. And like a lot of the words and the way that we talk, and it's not only Republicans, but the way that we talk could be organized better, and we could figure out a way to speak to one another that doesn't suggest anything of violence at all, especially in this climate. So I think the onus is really on the president not to respond like that, especially as the highest leader in the land. I just always call for him to be better than that.
I do think he overreacted, and unfortunately his overreaction became the story rather than this video that the Democrats made, which I think was clearly a dog whistle, I guess you could call it. It was what it insinuated, because their defense is, well, we only told them not to follow unlawful orders. Well, sure, obviously, if you're told to, murder a civilian, then you wouldn't do that. Every military member gets told in their training that you don't have to obey unlawful orders. So for them to make this video sort of reminding them of that carries this insinuation that Trump is engaging in unlawful orders and that the military is supposed to somehow sift through and behave like a legal scholar in determining whether or not Trump's strikes of the boats in Venezuela is legal or not. That's not really their role, right? There's a very clear red line when things are unlawful, but there's also cases where things are going to be adjudicated in the courts, and I don't think we should expect members of the military to sit there and have to deal with that sort of weighty decision because some lawmakers are encouraging them to do so. And I talked to a friend of mine who is a veteran and works in media, and they put it this way, which is, we're being naive if we think that what Slotkin was trying to communicate was an obvious, disobeying an obvious unlawful order. They want more Bradley Manning kinds of situations. They want high-profile summary acts of rebellion inside the active duty military, and it's sick and twisted to call for that.
And that's somebody with insider perspective, so I'll never disregard their thoughts on the matter. I think that most recent example would be Venezuela for me. At the end of the day, these servicemen and women that go fight for our country because they're told by our president they're doing the right thing could be in a moral complicated situation when they leave there. For example, like one of the attacks in the Caribbean in the Caribbean waters was October 14th. There was a guy killed named Chad Joseph, whose family is from Trinidad and Tobago. And they said that he was in Venezuela visiting, and they're trying to litigate this whole thing, saying that their son, who's not a cartel member or has nothing to do with drugs, was killed. And they want an explanation. But the thing is, we're sending people to different countries. Nobody really knows where anybody who survived is going, if they're under U.S. rule, if we're bringing people to justice. And so there's so much murkiness that usually would be organized better by having dialogue with Congress that we wouldn't see any civilians killed. So say you are part of the team that goes out and blows up this boat with this family that's now crying because their 26-year-old kid is missing. I mean, that's a prime example reported by the New York Times of somebody's family that's saying, wait, give me a reason why my son was killed, and we're not having a good one. On top of that, there's been a lot of agitation coming from the president, from calling the Defense Department now the Department of War, or from the big meeting with all military officials where he went on stage and said to use American cities as a, quote, training grounds for some of their actions. And we're turning the military on Americans. So a lot of people are asking, wait, are we going to go too far, or when do people need to stand up? I don't think that the military members should be left with the conundrum of making that decision themselves, but I do think the president needs to regard his role and his communication with Congress more seriously, so that we're not in a situation where a lot of the decisions he's making are overstepping leaders that are in our three-part system that checks and balances one another.
I guess I would feel more convinced that the people in the video, like Alyssa Slotkin and Mark Kelly, were coming from a sincere place of concern, as opposed to trying to have military leaders actively resist the president for political reasons, if they had made the same video when Obama was doing extrajudicial drone strikes. But none of these Democrats complained when Obama was flouting, military law and international law, and also was killing civilians in the Middle East on a regular basis. And so it just seems very politically opportunistic to me.
Well, we're going to keep talking about this, I know for sure.
Next up, Sean Duffy tells air passengers to dress with respect at airports. We'll talk about it. Don't go anywhere.
Dress with respect. That's the message from President Trump's transportation secretary to American air travelers.
Ahead of the busy holiday season, Sean Duffy detailed a new initiative to enhance the travel experience and safety for passengers. The campaign, launched by the Department of Transportation, was shared by Secretary Duffy on his social media page. He talks about the golden age of transportation. Let's take a look.
That's right. Manners don't stop at the gate. Things aren't what they used to be. Some would call it the golden age of travel. Let's bring civility and manners back. Ask yourself, are you helping a pregnant woman put her bag in the overhead bin? Are you dressing with respect? Are you keeping control of your children? Are you saying thank you to your flight attendants and your pilots? Are you saying please and thank you in general? The golden age of travel begins with you.
According to Federal Aviation Administration data, the FAA has recorded more than 400% increase in in-flight disturbances since 2019. That ranges from disruptive behavior to straight-up violence.
The agency has reported thousands of unruly passenger cases since 2021. Okay, I love it. I'm sorry. I think it's great. Look, what would it be even better, Lindsey, is if they bring back smoking on planes? But I know
No, you're gonna suffer.
I want like the 1950s, 60s Pan Am experience. I think a lot of the reason why passengers have gotten so unruly is because there's more delays, right? The flight attendants seem nastier. But I also think that, when you dress well, when you're treating something like an event that deserves respect, you tend to treat other people better. And I think a lot of the issues that we have on airplanes could be avoided if they had maybe a stricter dress code.
Oh, wow. I just want to start with the alternative position from that, because I don't know that I truly feel that way, but I just want to say that I think that nobody wants to hear about decorum and how it used to be from the president and his team that kind of ignores decorum in many cases and does not refer to traditional politics or the way you talk. He recently called somebody piggy on a plane. Like, he doesn't follow the rules of decorum as a president. So don't tell people how to behave in public settings when we just talked about how he bashed leaders in public and does all the things that are unconventional when it comes down to following the old school rules. Now, I've been on a plane, and my mom worked for TWA before the airline was over with. And she tells me all the time, like, she wants me to basically wear my work outfit on a plane.
That's right.
She wants me my makeup to be done to this level.
Listen to your mother.
She's very serious about it. Now, I love to be cozy, so I can wear a high-end, very nice, good quality sweatsuit and still fly, okay? That's my thing. But I go back and forth as I get older. I feel like I'm getting more like my mom. Mm-hmm. And one time I was in the airport, and it was New Year's Day, and I know everybody just raged and had a great time, but I saw so many pajamas. I was so sad.
I can't stand it.
I was so sad. I was just so sad for all the people in the airport. Like, oh, y'all really just said whatever and came whatever. I think that we could do a little bit better than that. You put on some high-end,
at least.
Even like some Lululemon, like something like you can put on something with a long shirt so your backside's not out. But
that's the thing. Yeah, it's like
there's some.
For me, I'd be like, no, it'd be like a high school dress code: no exposed shoulders, no exposed midriff, maybe no leggings. I think it would weed out a lot of the people who are causing the issues. You don't usually see someone wearing a suit on a plane who's, fighting with the flight.
Well, a three-piece suit is too far. Like, I've seen people fighting on the plane that have like a nice, decent quality H&M t-shirt, I'm assuming, and like some denim. Is that not nice enough? You really want people to be in slacks and a blazer?
I think it would be lovely.
See, that's too uncomfortable. I mean, the flight to Qatar was 14 hours. Slacks and a blazer?
That's fair. An overnight flight's a little bit different. But I think, 6 hours or less. I do think it's nice when...
what is the control room thing? You guys tell me before we have to go to commercial. Oh, they said control in the room thinks sweats and hoodies.
I wear nothing less than jeans.
And Kit over there, she says that she wants people... Well, she comes to work in like 6-inch heels, dressed to the nines every day. So, but I think how you do one thing is how you do anything, and that is true.
I think we can have a deal, right? If we get more space on airplanes like it used to be, and you're not jammed in like sardines, then people can dress up more, and maybe it's mutually beneficial changes, right?
You can have space to like do this and like show your nice outfit.
Yeah, that would be, exactly.
Okay, all right, we can agree on that.
All right, a federal judge has ordered the National Guard that was deployed to D.C. to go home. Stick around. National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. will soon be heading home. A federal judge ruled yesterday that the Trump administration must end its months-long deployment in the nation's capital.
You may remember soon after those troops were deployed, D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab sued to challenge it. Dozens of states took sides in that lawsuit, with their support falling on party lines. But yesterday, District Judge Gia Cobb, a Biden appointee, handed down her decision. She ruled that the takeover illegally intrudes on local official authority to direct law enforcement, and that while the president does have the authority to protect federal property and functions, he can't unilaterally deploy the National Guard as he sees fit or call in troops from other states. Her ruling called for the troops to be sent home, writing, quote, "Normalizing the use of military troops for domestic law enforcement sets a dangerous precedent where the president can disregard states' independence and deploy troops wherever and whenever he wants with no check on his military power."
Guard troops won't be sent home just yet. Cobb did put her order on hold for 21 days to allow for appeal. As for the White House, they're standing by the deployment. Spokeswoman told the AP, quote, President Trump is well within his lawful authority to deploy the National Guard in Washington, D.C. to protect federal assets and assist law enforcement with specific tasks. This lawsuit is nothing more than another attempt at the detriment of D.C. residents to undermine the president's highly successful operations to stop violent crime in D.C. I would imagine they're appealing this. I mean, no shot that they don't, right?
I mean, I guess my biggest question is because the conflict for me was never that I wanted, as a new resident of D.C., for the streets to be safer. Granted, that's great. But the conflict is, how long does the National Guard stay in a place that's a Band-Aid on a situation? Like, what is the long-term solution to work alongside local officials? Because you and I have talked about this at length to say that you think things need to change, but where I'm not hearing the conversations that the president is having directly with Mayor Bowser about what the next steps are to hold this long term for the next 3 years without keeping federal troops here that, you know, and hopefully we have no emergencies under President Trump, but, you know, things like a Hurricane Katrina or anything that we would need National Guard for, that's what their roles are. And so you don't want to scramble and pull them together when they've been working nonstop in D.C. or wherever they could be somewhere else, because other places have complained about resources to do some of the office work that's required for National Guard members is not able to get accomplished, or the day-to-day stuff that doesn't look like boots on the ground on the street is not able to get accomplished because they're making sure that they have resources where the president wants them. So what's the long-term solution look like to keep the streets of D.C. safe once the National Guard go? Because obviously crime is going to go down if military personnel are standing all over the street. So now what?
There's a few things that Mayor Bowser can do. I mean, one of them is to start filling the, they have a massive issue with the police force, right? Where they don't have enough people. And so if she's able to fill those gaps, that would be one way to make sure that there's enough resources in the city to keep crime down. She offered bonuses a while ago, but I think this is more of a cultural issue where people don't really feel like they want to work as police in D.C. because they don't feel like they're protected. In fact, I worked on a story with my colleague at the Daily Caller a couple of months ago where we talked to individuals who have worked with the police department in D.C., and they said that there was basically a systemic effort to misreport crimes or not bring charges against individuals because they wanted to have the appearance of crime being low, even if it actually wasn't. One of the things that's unique about the Metropolitan Police Department is that in most police departments, according to people we talk to, when an officer is on scene for an arrest, they are typically the one who decides what charges are brought against a suspect. But in D.C., they have to call a supervisor to charge anyone with a violent crime. And so from that 2023 period where we saw violent crime start to fall in D.C., they said was the exact same time that they saw these policy changes taking place that discouraged them from actually charging violent crimes. They created 2 new crime categories to pull numbers away from things like robbery and assault into categories that were not classified as violent crime, things that were technically lower charges. So for example, if a teenager came up and bopped you on the head and you dropped your phone and they picked up your phone and ran away, they no longer classify that as a robbery because the assault and the theft of the phone were 2 separate incidences. So that doesn't get charged as a violent crime, even though it obviously is. So just defying the laws of common sense. So fixing a lot of those issues should be a priority for Mayor Bowser. She also needs to get Attorney General Brian Schwab in check. He's in charge of prosecuting juvenile cases in D.C. and has routinely let out people who are repeat offenders and refused to charge them. And it's no wonder that in D.C. we see that a lot of the crime problem, particularly with things like carjackings and robberies, is being driven by youth offenders.
And I think what needs to be clear, because a lot of the friction that you see coming from anybody who's resisting the president and his suggestions, even as recent as this week, he said with the leader of FIFA in town that he would like cities like Los Angeles, like Seattle, and like Boston to cooperate with him on a National Guard level so that we can present the best crime-free cities to the world as they come here for FIFA next year. And then he threatened pulling or changing the locations of these FIFA games if they don't, which I think is also absurd. But saying those two things together is that we always hear loud noise in conversation about the threats or the unlawfulness of skipping over what a mayor or a governor may or may not want in order to achieve President Trump's goals. But what we lack and what we don't hear is the president laying out a clear agenda or having a meeting like he's having today with Mamdani and Mayor Bowser that opens the door for this transparent, or as he likes to refer to himself, transparent president, telling us what he wants to see Mayor Bowser do and then letting her respond to say straight up no or yes. Because I haven't heard her say that she won't do anything or will make any changes since the National Guard comes in. I've heard she's been very amenable. She said now that the time line has ended, she told him that she thinks that the National Guard should leave because there was an agreed upon time, and now they've gone past that. And now we have courts involved. But I think that what would behoove us all, if this great experiment of trying the National Guard in D.C., which is an anomaly, it's not like any other state that would require much more to send National Guards for local crime problems, it would be to be transparent and to say what you're looking for, because you named detailed agenda about what you'd like to happen, but we haven't seen the president who implemented this strategy sit down with Mayor Bowser and say, okay, so what'd she say about that? Is she going to do it? What's the next steps? Like, what are the next steps? And that's what I think, if they're not laid out for us, then we're all kind of sitting back. Like, if it goes back to normal, then we're like, what was the coordination? Because deep coordination needs to happen between local and federal officials in order to make this work forever. And if this is supposed to be a lasting solution to America's crime problem, especially when we're looking at D.C., which is the nation's capital, that will be the mirror for the rest of the country where the president is suggesting this, show us an example of how you can work in a bipartisan nature to make this long-term and effective. And that's what I think is the biggest thing that we're missing from his entire agenda about fighting crime in the U.S.
Yeah, they certainly have been meeting, him and Bowser, and talking pretty regularly, but I think it's fair to say that they haven't publicly said what the results of those meetings are, but clearly they are happening. They're trying to coordinate something. Bowser did a press conference shortly after the National Guard came in and admitted that the crime numbers had gone down and that she was grateful for the president's cooperation, but she didn't provide details on what she was planning on doing next. So I would like to see that too.
And I think that's the thing. Like, it's like keeping us in the group chat. The president put us in the group chat when he was announcing this, and then we saw the National Guard here, and we were all like, not all. Some people were excited. Some people were alarmed. There were lots of feelings that were very public. But the conversations on long-term solution and how this will affect D.C. in the long run can't be private. If we started off from a place that wasn't like a calm meeting with Bowser and Trump saying, here's our plan for the future, that looked normal and calm, we started off with almost like a threat, with Bowser saying that she kind of opposed it on like places like the Breakfast Club, but then not really giving Trump too much friction. And when she was face to face with him, and then doing that press conference where she's like, well, this is actually working. We're getting confused as the public, who was just, it was thrown on people who live in D.C., but then also the rest of the country, and then not continue to be communicated with about what the long-term strategy is here. I think that's the biggest issue for people with the National Guard, or even with a totally separate issue with ICE, is like, okay, so what's the long-term solution? Once we throw everybody out, then what? You know, what's the plan? Because immigrants will always come, new people, so what's the plan?
Well, they're not coming now because the border's closed.
Well, they're not coming over the border, but they're flying in. Immigrants from China are coming. Immigrants from South Africa. Now we've opened the border to them. Like, people are coming every day. They don't look like the typical Latin American immigrants that the president is trying to paint this picture with, but immigrants come and overstay their visas every single day.
Well, yeah, but they're being deported. And also, I mean, we have net negative migration for the first time in decades in the U.S.
But this is because we closed the border and did things that could have been bipartisan in nature when the president stopped the bill that was pushed through.
That wasn't a border security bill.
That wasn't border security. It was a bipartisan. It was a bipartisan border bill. That's what I'm saying. They're working on.
James Langford was involved in the negotiations so that the Democrats could call it bipartisan, but it was a.
So you're saying that it wasn't bipartisan, even though several people from the Republican side were saying that they agreed with this moving forward, and then the president jumped in and said, "I want to win the election, so don't vote on this," and stopped it down. And that was a step in the right direction, but he can't make Biden look good in any way. So we didn't solve it. A long-term solution would be to get in Congress and put a bill forward that tells us, again, it's the same thing with immigration. What is going to be on pen and paper that's our immigration policy moving forward, outside of the president going to cities and arresting some Americans, arresting some immigrants, all chaos? That's not a plan. So what's the actual long-term plan is what I'm saying.
My point is that is technically bipartisan because there was a small handful of Republicans involved, but the vast majority of the caucus did not agree with it. They wanted H.R. 2, which was an actual border security bill. The Democrats rejected it. The bill that you're talking about was a bill to basically ensure that illegal immigrants could be processed faster and released into the country faster, which is not a real border security solution, right?
And I don't think what we're doing now is a real border security solution either. It's just putting a Band-Aid on a problem that won't be long-term.
Oh, okay. All right.
A new report from the Wall Street Journal is highlighting the debate around the pros and cons of giving ADHD medication to children. Stay with us for that.
A new article from the Wall Street Journal is prompting discussion about the potential dangers of ADHD medication.
The article profiles several kids and young adults who were diagnosed with ADHD at a young age and details the drawbacks that came with the drugs they were prescribed. It reads in part, quote, about 7.1 million American children ages 3 to 17 have an ADHD diagnosis, according to an analysis of 2022 federal data. About half took ADHD medication for it that year, and prescriptions are growing. Children who were prescribed a medication for ADHD were more likely to take additional psychiatric drugs over the ensuing 4 years. Clinical trials have shown ADHD drugs, among them stimulants such as Ritalin and Adderall, are safe and effective for many patients, but less is known about the impact of multiple psychiatric drugs on young children.
The article spread quickly online, with many people expressing outrage. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis weighed in, asking, didn't kids do just fine in the days before it was the norm to pump them with pills? And author Alex Berenson writes, the two most descriptive words, or just deceptive words rather, in the English language are ADHD drugs. We need to call them what they are every single time. Amphetamines. You aren't giving your kids ADHD medicine, you're giving them amphetamines, among the most addictive and dangerous drugs around.
A few months ago, Stanford Medicine published a study arguing that ADHD should be treated with behavioral therapy first before moving on to medication. The study's lead author says, quote, we found that many young children are being prescribed medications very soon after their diagnosis of ADHD is documented. That's concerning because we know starting ADHD treatment with behavioral approach is beneficial. It has a big positive effect on the child as well as on the family.
I feel this is the kind of thing that makes me feel like a radical, because it makes me so angry. There's been several research studies and reports, including one in the New York Times a few years back, that talked about the potential dangers of putting kids on ADHD medication, SSRIs, and found that it didn't really help their outcomes. In fact, a lot of them ended up on even more drugs than when they started. And I talked to a lot of parents, around the country, but specifically in the DMV area. And this is a particular problem, it seems, with young boys who, at the age of 3, 4, 5 are rambunctious, right? Have a lot of energy, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And they get into this very rigid school environment and they get bored and they start acting out. And the conclusion is not that they need to be better engaged while in school. It's, well, we need to put them on medicine. We need to give them a pill to make them calm down. And this sort of reflexive way of reacting to issues with children by medicalizing it, I think is going to cause a lot of great damage to our young people. And I'm very, very concerned about it.
Yeah, I'm hesitant about this because obviously I'm not a doctor. And so I know that medicine can be life-changing for some kids, and that people that I know with children that have been diagnosed with ADHD might use one of the medicines and find that in certain situations and when they decide to administer it with the supervision of their doctor, it has been helpful. But at the same time, as a mom, I can speak to it and say that if Kinsley ever was in a situation where that was advised by a doctor, I would always go for the behavioral therapy or the conversations first, as suggested by a lot of this research that we're seeing. I know that 1 in 5 children on ADHD ends up on multiple medicines, and that's the issue for me, because some of those lead to even deeper psych medicines down the line, which I think nobody should be addicted to different pills to help them get out of in a feeling or state of being. And I also get very hesitant about those joyful, gleeful children that I see full of life that just turn kind of quiet and sit still. And I've seen the reaction of it, that just, they're like a shell of themselves. And to me, the best thing I could do as a mom is to encourage and enhance my daughter Kinsley to be her most vibrant self, so that she can figure out what that looks like as she turns into a vibrant adult and how that turns up in the world. And I think part of that could look like stifling if I'm like, oh, that's too much, or this is too, because maybe it's not too much, maybe she just needs to learn differently. And so I know even as I'm going through this process about schooling, there are different types of schools for children that maybe if your kid is more of like not a rigid schedule person, especially in DC, I find that it's really open-minded about the different variety of schools, all to get to the same end game, that you can still learn. But But I think also a big thing for me, and this comes up a lot for young Black boys, is distinguishing between ADHD as a problem and actual trauma or stress that's in the home or normal preschool behavior. Because if there's any incidence, and I'm only saying Black boys because it's higher in communities of color, the trauma and stress that may be attached to their lifestyles, but any young boy in that instance, when I look at studies, I don't want to misdiagnose kids because they're dealing with something at home. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes because we have doctors that maybe, and this is not blanket statement, but maybe they're trying to get through their day and quickly prescribe, or even schools, districts that don't know how to deal with them. So they send them to the nurse or to the psychologist on site at the school and quickly want to prescribe. They're not taking the time out to say, well, this kid is acting out because he's having trouble at home. And that leads to a variety and a slew of issues, not only just saying they have ADHD. So I think if we had the care and the time and the resources, some of that comes with schools that are underfunded. So they don't have the resources to take the time out with each kid, which is also unfortunate when they're dealing with things like overpacked classrooms and things like that. But I do think that we should not be quickly saying that all these things, because they're signs of ADHD, are ADHD when they could be signs of trauma and stress.
Yeah, there's definitely this feeling over the past decade or so that doctors are more quick to prescribe medicine for perceived behavioral issues or mood changes. And just as a personal anecdote, when my dad passed away, someone convinced me to go to therapy. Horrible idea. Anyway, I went, and the first meeting, I sit down. Within 2 minutes, the therapist says, well, are you sad? Well, yeah, obviously. I'm grieving. And he goes, do you think you need to be on antidepressants?
Oh, really?
And I was like, I'm not the doctor here. I don't think that's like within my purview to say whether or not, but also I'm pretty sure I'm just sad.
Yeah,
like, I don't
naturally.
think I'm depressed. And to me, it was like so disturbing. I couldn't take it seriously from then on out. But
I think we talked about schooling, there's different types of therapy too, because I've done therapy a variety of times and in different states, because sometimes when you have a therapist in a state, you can't carry them over. And I kept getting new jobs in new states. They can't practice in certain states. And so if I got a new therapist, some of them I would run away from immediately because I know I don't want any medicine, right? But some of them I would be like, okay, you do this type of therapy where you want to talk about the past to connect it to my present, or some of them just will talk about right now. Whatever it is, it might not work for you, but it's the ones that prescribe medicines, like my friends have told me that, oh, I went to this therapy, she gave me this. That to me is the quickest Band-Aid. And again, I'm not a doctor, but that's a red flag to me also.
Yeah, I mean, you're not getting to like the root of the problem. You're just trying to medicate your way out of it. And people who have been on these psychoactive drugs like Prozac, SSRIs, whatever, when they try to get off of them, the withdrawal symptoms are incredibly intense and can take years to taper off with the doctor's assistance. And they end up feeling suicidal when they're coming off of these drugs because of how much it has affected their brain chemistry. I'm very, very worried about this for the little ones.
Yeah.
Next up on Rising, there's a sweater that's sparking a culture war online. We'll talk about it after this. Who knew a wool sweater could cause such a stir? It started when conservative commentator Juanita Broaddrick posted a photo of a $168 pink sweater from JCrew, writing, "Are you kidding me? Men, would you wear this $168 sweater?" The question escalated into a culture war over fashion, gender, and masculinity. Congressman Tim Burchett posted, "It's something a sorority girl would wear in the 80s. And political commentator Gunter Eagleman wrote, "Be careful, you may offend Eric Swalwell." Other X-users wrote, "Emasculating men in America is a serious issue. No alpha male will ever be caught dead wearing this sweater," as well as asking, "Is it part of the Gavin Newsom collection?"
But a reviewer on JCrew's website wrote, "Anyone who says this is a feminine sweater is wrong. I like guy stuff, and this is the best piece in my wardrobe." And a Reddit user wrote, quote, "MAGA has the audacity to call everyone else, quote, special snowflakes. Imagine being triggered by a sweater." JCrew has not publicly commented on this major controversy.
Oh, gosh.
So first of all, I actually would get that sweater. I really love it for me. I don't like, pink doesn't bother me. So I grew up in New York where there was a artist, rapper, recording artist named Cameron who's extremely masculine. I mean, he's in relationships with women, whatever you want to call masculine in our society, which people describe as toxic masculinity, because I don't even think that means masculine. For me, growing up with a dad and a partner from down south, being a man traditionally does not mean some of the things that it's been combined with today. But wearing that is an option. And Cameron, to go back to this artist, wore pink for his entire 10 years of his career. And I remember people were like, oh my God, but he was just trying to make a statement to go with his art. It meant nothing about being soft or whatever people wanted to associate it with. Now, if Colin came through with this sweater, might not be my favorite outfit today. I'm not gonna lie. It might not be my favorite outfit for him, but I'm also not gonna say you're not a man because you had that sweater on. He certainly is still a man. I just don't like his outfit. I don't understand why people are so riled up, and this equates to emasculating men.
I read the headline and I was like, really, we're arguing over a sweater? And I also don't care if men wear pink. I mean, sometimes the pink button downs could look nice with the jeans or whatever.
Especially on a baby shower.
Yeah, but I clicked on the link, and when I saw the sweater, I went, And I did a very scientific poll. I showed this to the men in my office at the Daily Caller, and there was universal agreement that they would personally not purchase this sweater, and that it did look like maybe it belonged in the women's section, but that's okay, to each their own.
I just want to know if any of the guys on our show would wear this sweater.
Yeah, I want to know too.
I'm in my ear talking to them, see if anybody in the control. Okay, we got Alex. Oh, we got two people. Okay, so the sweater is not. And also, what about the, and I'm not saying it's ugly, JCrew, okay? In case you guys want to sponsor the show, you're welcome to. But I say that if guys want to wear this to the ugly Christmas sweater party, what about that? I go to those every year.
That would work.
That would work.
I agree with you, though. If Jonathan wore that sweater, I would start to question his taste a little bit.
Yeah, but Colin has done, so Colin and I are so polar opposite. He's from Texas and I'm from New York. So, the style already is cowboy. He truly has cowboy boots. So the stuff that I didn't grow up with. So when I met him, I was already alarmed by many things. Just like I'm sure he was with me, that just were cultural differences that I have grown to be like, wow, that's actually fascinating and super cool. I've never owned a pair of cowboy boots until now. And so I think with that, it's if that was his style, I think if I love Colin, then I'll just grow to say he likes sweaters that are just interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do anything if he wore a sweater I didn't like. I mean, what are you going to do? I'm sure I wear stuff that he doesn't like all the time.
Have you ever been have you guys have to say to each other, oh, babe, change? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes. Yeah, we do. We're honest with each other when it comes to things like that. And when we order clothes to the house, we try stuff on for each other and get each other's opinion. Which is nice, right? We trust each other to be honest, and if something's not flattering or it doesn't look nice on us, I don't really let Jonathan wear red because he is has pink undertones in his skin, and so I think it makes him look red. So I'm we'll do the blues and the greens, and he loves blue and green, so it works out great.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There you go. I don't really tell Colin too much about his clothes, but he has told me about mine before. I've ordered stuff to the house, and he's been
you're not leaving
throw the whole box away. Just throw the whole box away. And he's usually right. I'm going way outside of my comfort zone doing too much. That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you don't miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen to The Go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. We will see you guys next week.